Confidence is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't beg for applause. It doesn't announce itself with arrogance or fill the room with noise to mask insecurity. It is not in the bone-crushing handshake, the polished smile that hides nervousness, or the endless words that serve only to cover the fear of silence. True confidence is stillness. It's sitting in a room and not needing to perform. It's being present without seeking validation. When the world expects you to react and you don't, that's power. That's nonchalance. Not apathy, but deliberate restraint. A calm so calculated it becomes a language, a signal, a shield, a weapon. The powerful understand this. They know attention is a currency. Every time you react, you're paying out. Every emotional flicker, every over-explanation, every effort to defend yourself, that's a transaction. The nonchalant man doesn't waste currency. He guards it. He does not chase people or explain his worth. He makes others work for his words, his presence, his attention. That's not laziness. It's mastery. It says, I am untouched, and nothing you do can pull me from my center. That frustrates rivals. It seduces allies. It unbalances enemies. They swing wildly, hoping for a reaction, and when it doesn't come, they crumble. Machiavelli would call this the quiet mask of dominance. Power so absolute, it doesn't raise its voice. Nonchalance is not a personality trait. It is a learned discipline. It is the deliberate act of detachment when everyone else is chained to emotional reaction. It is stepping back while others drown in storms of ego, insecurity, and desperation. Most people are reactive by nature. An insult lands, they bite. A crisis comes, they panic. A temptation appears, they leap. They feel silence as a void, and they rush to fill it with noise just to feel in control. That's why nonchalance is terrifying to them. It denies them the game they're used to playing. Consider this. The one who is loud, expressive, emotional, they are easy to read. You can predict them. You can exploit them. But the man who gives you nothing, he's the one you fear. Because you don't know where he stands, what he's thinking, or what he might do next. That uncertainty forces everyone around him into hesitation, and hesitation is where power lives. Machiavelli said a ruler should appear unshaken, whether the kingdom is flourishing or falling apart, because perception shapes reality. If people believe you are unmovable, they treat you as if you are, and soon you become that person in their eyes, even if you're just quietly calculating your next step. This is where nonchalance becomes psychological warfare. You do nothing, yet others exhaust themselves trying to read you, understand you, provoke you. Your stillness becomes the strike. Your silence becomes the blade. When you give them no pattern, no reaction, no predictable behavior, the human mind begins to fill in the blanks with its own fears. You become bigger than life in their imagination. Smarter, more dangerous, more strategic than you even need to be. The greatest power players in history knew this. The calmest man in the room wins, not because he has more strength, but because everyone else starts playing his game on his terms. Nonchalance doesn't just protect you from manipulation, it renders it useless. The reason propaganda, baiting, and guilt work on most people is because they react. They lash out, justify, protest, and in doing so, they give up power. But the nonchalant man doesn't take the bait. He sees it, recognizes it for what it is, and does nothing. And in doing nothing, he forces the manipulator to play their hand alone. They waste energy, they get frustrated, they slip. Nonchalance is not passive. It is not weakness. It is active control. It is calculated timing. It is the difference between reacting and deciding, between noise and clarity. In business, the man who doesn't rush into a deal often gets the best terms. In relationships, the one who can walk away without flinching holds the upper hand. In leadership, the one who stays composed when the building's on fire becomes the figure everyone gravitates toward, because chaos makes people look for an anchor. If you can be that anchor, not because you pretend, but because you are, then you own the room. Nonchalance flips the entire dynamic of power. You stop chasing validation. You make others chase yours. You stop scrambling for position. You let others compete for the space you've already claimed with your presence. This is not magic. It is psychology. When you give nothing away, others project meaning onto you. They assume depth where there is silence. They imagine strategy where there is simply control. And in that uncertainty, they hesitate. They miscalculate. They reveal themselves. While you, the nonchalant one, sit steady, still, and observant. You see them clearer than they see you. You move only when it matters. You speak only when the silence has done enough damage. And when you finally move, it is felt like an earthquake, because stillness, when broken, is deafening. This is why nonchalance is so rare. It requires the kind of internal discipline most people never build. It means retraining your responses to urgency. Most people live on fast forward, pinged, prompted, and pulled in 1,000 directions. They move at the world's tempo. The nonchalant man sets his own rhythm. He delays, he pauses, he breathes. And when he moves, the world notices. Because he's not always there. His presence is not a given, it's a statement. When he speaks, people listen. When he acts, it shifts the room. Not because he is the loudest, but because he is the hardest to predict, the hardest to provoke, and the hardest to replace. He becomes the gravitational center without asking for it. His calmness commands more than shouting ever could. And the brilliance of nonchalance is that it rewires not only how others perceive you, but how you begin to perceive yourself. When you refuse to be pulled into chaos, when you train your nervous system to remain still under pressure, something inside you begins to shift. You stop operating from panic. You stop chasing closure. You start choosing when and how to engage. The world stops dictating your rhythm. You start playing your own music, at your own volume, and others unconsciously begin to dance to it. This isn't arrogance, it's autonomy. The nonchalant man does not need to dominate to feel powerful. His power lies in being unaffected, in his refusal to be rushed or rattled. And people sense it. They speak softer in his presence. They weigh their words. They measure their tone. They adjust themselves instinctively because he doesn't. He's already chosen his pace, and that pace doesn't change for noise, for praise, or for threats. That's the magnetic force of restraint. The more he withholds, the more others want to be close to it. But nonchalance is not just defense. It can be offense. It's the power to set emotional traps without ever appearing to do so. Because while most are trying to prove, explain, and perform, the nonchalant man is simply watching. And in that stillness, others overextend. They overshare. They underestimate. They reveal their intentions. Why? Because they crave feedback. They need emotional response to measure where they stand. And when they get none, they start guessing. And guessing leads to mistakes. When someone insults you and you do not respond, they begin to fear what you're thinking. When someone pressures you and you stay calm, they start wondering what you know. When someone tries to control the situation and you stay composed, they begin to lose control themselves. This is not passive resistance, it is psychological precision. Because the nonchalant man doesn't just survive pressure, he converts it into leverage. He turns other people's urgency into his advantage. He lets them expose their hand while keeping his own face unreadable. That unreadability is the core of mystique. It turns you into a puzzle. And human nature is drawn to puzzles. We are wired to chase understanding. When someone is easy to figure out, we move on. But when someone shows restraint, when their emotions are locked behind composure, they become intriguing. Nonchalance invites projection. People fill in the blanks with their own fantasies, fears, desires, and often they assign you more depth, more strength, more power than you may actually possess. You become a myth, not because you created it, but because you didn't interfere with it. And yet, to wield this power skillfully requires discipline. It is not enough to be quiet or stoic. You must be deliberate. Every pause must serve a purpose. Every silence must be felt, not empty. The room must feel your absence when you leave and feel your gravity when you speak. That's the rhythm of control. And once you control rhythm, you control perception. And perception, in most arenas of life, business, romance, leadership, war, is reality. The most powerful leaders in history understood this. They didn't always have the most weapons or the loudest voice. What they had was presence, controlled energy, strategic silence, and a deep understanding that in high-stakes environments, the one who stays composed the longest wins, because the first to panic always makes the first mistake, and mistakes are currency in the hands of the calm. Nonchalance doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you choose what deserves your emotional energy. You are not detached from the world. You are selective. You are not passive. You are patient. You are not indifferent. You are immune to noise. The world is constantly screaming, constantly performing, constantly reacting, and in that chaos, you stand still. That's not weakness. That's sovereignty. But remember, stillness is not inaction. The nonchalant man acts. But when he does, it's surgical. It's silent. It's sudden. And because he acts so rarely, his movement carries weight. You don't waste words. You don't flood people with attention. You don't announce your plans. You observe. You wait. And when the moment comes, you strike with precision. That's what gives your presence gravity. That's what builds the reputation that others start to fear. And fear, when rooted in respect, is power. It makes people second-guess themselves around you. They become more careful, more thoughtful, more restrained. Not because you told them to be, but because your presence demands it. They feel the edge of your stillness, the sharpness of your control, and they instinctively move slower, quieter, more cautiously. You become the silent judge in the room. You don't need to impose rules, your energy writes them. But this control is delicate. The more available you are, the more you speak, the more you overexpose yourself, the more the mystique fades. The rare is valuable. The familiar is ignored. That's why the nonchalant man is not constantly visible. He's not constantly reachable. He withdraws not out of insecurity, but to preserve gravity. He makes solitude feel powerful, not lonely. He does not explain his absence. His presence is enough of a statement. And when he experiences loss, when things don't go his way, he absorbs the moment like a stone absorbs the tide. No emotional outbursts, no visible cracks. He accepts defeat with the same poise he accepts victory. And in doing so, he teaches others that his stability is not circumstantial. It is internal. And that, more than anything, makes people trust him. Not because he never loses, but because he never falls apart. His speech is equally calculated. He doesn't flood conversations. He doesn't fill every silence. He speaks with purpose. Brevity becomes his armor. People hang on his words because he doesn't give them often. And when he does speak, the words matter. They cut deeper. They linger longer. He never uses 10 words when 3 will do. And this economy of language forces others to read between the lines, guess at his intentions, analyze every syllable. Nonchalance is not about apathy, it's about priority. You care deeply, but only about the right things. You don't waste attention on petty dramas or shallow validation. You spend your focus like gold, only where it returns power, clarity, or growth. That discipline makes you rare. And in a world addicted to reaction, your restraint becomes irresistible. When this becomes your default posture, the shift is profound. People treat you differently, not because you ask them to, but because they feel the change. Their voices lower, their demands soften, their attitude shifts, and they won't even know why. They just feel the pull, that quiet dominance, that sense that they're no longer in control of the conversation. They've entered your rhythm, and now you set the tone. This is the end game of nonchalance. Not to impress, not to intimidate, but to become untouchable. Not because you look unbothered, but because you are. You've reclaimed your pace, your power, your peace. And once others realize they can't drag you into the frantic noise of the world, they're forced to slow down, to adjust, to follow. And in that moment, you've won. Nonchalance, in its raw form, is the absence of visible concern. But when refined, it becomes a tool of immense strategic weight, a weapon that disarms rivals, unsettles opponents, and draws allies into orbit without force or persuasion. Human beings are conditioned to follow emotional cues. We chase validation. We respond to stimuli. When those cues are removed, when emotional availability is denied, the normal script breaks. And in that broken script, you seize power, not by force, but by confusion. Because in politics, in business, in social dynamics, the most dangerous man is not the one who yells. It's the one who says nothing, reveals nothing, reacts to nothing. The one who seems calm while the ground shakes beneath his feet. That composure creates a cognitive dissonance in others. Why isn't he worried? What does he know that I don't? This imbalance leads to self-doubt. And self-doubt is where control begins to shift without a word. To weaponize nonchalance is to accept a new law. Perception is reality. The way you carry yourself dictates how others interpret your strength. A man who flinches under pressure invites attack. A negotiator who seems eager invites lower terms. A leader who appears desperate invites disloyalty. But a figure who stands still amidst chaos signals something far more terrifying. Control. That control doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. In the silence. In the slowness. In the refusal to panic when others do. The greatest tacticians in history didn't win because they shouted the loudest. They won because they understood presence. They could walk into a room and change the energy by existing in it. When others ran on fear, they stood still. When rumors flew, they didn't chase them. They let them swirl. That stillness wasn't weakness. It was the tightening of a noose, so slow the victim didn't notice until it was too late. And you too can learn this. You can stand motionless while others unravel themselves trying to provoke you. You can break their strategy by refusing to give it oxygen. Their aggression burns alone. Their tactics collapse in the vacuum of your composure. Nonchalance is attractive because it's rare. In a world of desperation, indifference is mistaken for strength. But make no mistake, this isn't about pretending not to care. It's about knowing precisely when and where to care. It's the art of caring selectively, of never wasting energy on things that hold no power over you. And when you stop reacting to everything, you begin to dictate what matters. You shape the game itself. That allure, the sense that you are not fully available, becomes irresistible. People chase what they can't possess. When you are always eager, you are easy to calculate. When you are detached, you become a puzzle. And puzzles are irresistible. People begin to play for your approval, your attention, your presence. And in doing so, they fall into your gravity. You become the one they calibrate themselves around. But nonchalance demands mastery. Many fail because they confuse it with laziness, with emotional apathy. True nonchalance is highly active. It demands awareness of every emotional undercurrent in the room. You must feel everything and react to almost nothing. You must sense when to remain still and when to move with force. Total detachment can be mistaken for coldness, and constant restraint risks making you appear irrelevant. The art lies in balance. It's also a powerful offensive strategy. When used precisely, nonchalance sets the perfect trap. Appear indifferent. Let others overextend. Let them assume you're unaware, unmotivated, unconcerned. They'll take risks. They'll underestimate. They'll reveal their strategy. And just when they believe they've won, you strike with clarity, speed, and precision. Not as a last-minute gamble, but as a planned execution. They never saw it coming because you never signaled intent. You turned their assumption into your advantage. The key is your internal dialogue. If you pretend to be composed but are boiling beneath, it leaks through eventually. Nonchalance must be authentic. You must train yourself to detach from outcome, not by ignoring it, but by pursuing it without dependence. You move with direction, but without desperation. That is not apathy. That is quiet focus. You become the ruler, not the subject. And rulers do not panic. They calculate. They direct. When this is real, when it becomes a part of your operating system, the effect is total. Competitors will get frustrated trying to read you. Negotiators will become cautious. Allies will become devoted. And adversaries will become confused, because no matter what they do, you hold the rhythm. Your pulse doesn't change. You become a mirror, reflecting their instability back at them. In a world of reaction, the man who watches without blinking holds the sharpest blade. But there's danger in this too. Every weapon has an edge that can turn on the wielder. Nonchalance can become a cage if misunderstood. Too much stillness becomes paralysis. If you hesitate when decisiveness is required, you lose power. A general who won't give orders in battle loses his army. You must know when stillness is strength, and when it is cowardice wearing armor. Another trap: detachment becoming indifference. If you wear the mask of composure too long, you might forget how to engage deeply. You may start mistaking emotional connection for vulnerability. You may stop seeing people, stop seeing the current of life itself. And then the board flips. You think you're above the game, but the game continues beneath your feet, and you've lost sight of it. There's also the risk of waking hidden enemies. People can forgive arrogance, but they resent invisibility. If they feel that you look through them rather than at them, they won't attack you openly. They will plot in silence, in places your nonchalance cannot reach. And when they strike, it won't be out of ambition. It will be out of a deep-seated need to break the mask you never took off. And in intimate relationships, too much nonchalance corrodes trust. People need to feel seen. If you never show that anything affects you, they will question your loyalty. They will wonder if you care at all. A great ruler can be cold in war, but warm at the campfire. You must know when to hold, and when to let someone see you bleed. Power isn't about always being above emotion. It's about choosing when to share it. And finally, the most dangerous trap of all is believing your own mask. When you wear the armor too long, you forget it's armor. You forget how to take it off. You become untouchable, not because you're strong, but because you've gone hollow. The mask becomes your identity. And that's the beginning of your decline. Machiavelli would remind you, true power is adaptability. Ice in winter, fire in summer, composure in public, intimacy in private. The most powerful are not those who never show emotion. They are those who decide when to show it and when not to. At its peak, nonchalance is a performance. It is not about how you feel, it is about what others believe you feel. The moment you start performing for yourself, believing that calm equals power in